wants to get things started off here. Just an overgrown tomb and pass it back. Nestico, you see black-white mid-range, Orzhov mid-range, however you want to classify it. A deck that's been picking up a little bit here as he has Pack Rat on turn number 2. He has 4 copies of that along with Desecration Demon, Blood Baron, 3 copies of Lifebane Zombie in the main deck. Ross going to play Mutavault and pass it back. Everything else pretty stock here from Mark. Underworld Connections, Elspeth, Thoughtseize, Bile-Blight, Ultimate Price, Devour Flesh, and Hero's Downfall. You do see people starting to move back towards Ultimate Price now, though.
Yeah, Ultimate Price plus Lifebane Zombie, indicators that Mark is correctly perceiving the metagame to be very green creature-oriented right now.
Mark is going to attack that Pack Rat into the Mutavault, kind of signifying that, hey, I've got some sort of removal spell. But what that means, more importantly, Patrick, is no third land, as Ross is going to play a forest and pass the turn back. There's the third land, a good one, too.
And now we get to see the Pack Rat game that we've become so familiar with over the last couple of months.
Ross going to slam down that 4th land, play a Desecration Demon, pass the turn back, as Nestico is going to discard Blood Baron of Vizkopa. Here comes a Rat token, the first of potentially many from Mark.
And Tom's list is one that looks pretty exposed to Pack Rat overall. There's no Mizzium Mortars, no Bile Blights, no real way to catch up. And it's, this Pack Rat is a card that's very challenging to beat if you don't have sweepers in your deck.
A Desecration Demon will pay the ultimate prices. Nestico's going to come across here for 8 points of damage. 3 from each Pack Rat, 2 from the Mutavault. So a healthy attack there. Ross immediately underneath the gun, and this looks like a couple months ago.
We've seen this song and dance before, certainly. And Nestico with more removal spells left over in his hand. It appears another Devour Flesh and another Hero's Downfall, so he can answer cards like Desecration Demon or even Vraska. And I anticipate Pack Rat running away with this game.
We've seen a lot of people with a lot of different answers to Pack Rat. We've seen Gary Charms and Bile Blights and Verdicts and Detention Spheres, but as you mentioned, Ross's deck, pretty light actually on answers.
Yeah. He's only really just touching red game 1, at least for Rakdos Return. So he doesn't have something like Overloaded Mizzium Mortars as a way to get out of this.
Ross with another copy of Desecration Demon, one of the cards that's traditionally actually pretty poor in the Mono Black Mirror against Mono Black Devotion or Orzhov midrange, as we do see here. Nestico with the Devour Flesh into the grip right now. Could take that out. Obviously Ross can activate the Mutavault in response and sacrifice that, but as you mentioned, we believe he has a Hero's Downfall in his hand right now as well, so Mark has slowed down a little bit, and he's going to play Desecration Demon and pass the turn back, so maybe he doesn't have the answer that he's looking for. As Ross draws a Courser of Crufix for the turn.
I think there is some risk to this line from Mark. We know, in practice, not really, because Tom doesn't have an out, but he is potentially opening himself up here to Bile Blight, which he could have kind of shut the door on by just making a rat. But Mark's still firmly in control here.
Yeah, if he makes a rat and leaves a Mutavault up, he can make him into 4/4s, and then he's good to go. As Ross is going to reveal one of his 3 main deck Gary Charms. A little surprising to see it be that number, but it's obviously working out pretty well for him so far, sitting at 3-0. As you do see a look there at Mark Nestico. Florida player has made the trip up here. We don't, unfortunately, get to come down to that area all that much, but when we were in Orlando, he was there too, playing some Magic, as we're going to see a second Thoughtseize here from him, once to get an idea of what's in Ross's hand before he moves forward.
And this is a pretty good turn for Mark to land the Thoughtseize, as he still has 3 mana left over to make a rat.
Yeah. Going to put him in the squeeze with Desecration Demon, too. You see Ross is thinking about responding, and if he does, how he wants to do so. Looks like he has a Hero's Downfall at the ready here.
I think it appears to be a Hero's Downfall and a Desecration Demon.
Yeah. Ross giving this the long look. And now he is going to fire that off and take care of the 6/6 flyer. So now Thoughtseize is going to resolve. Took care of the Desecration Demon on Ross's side. Now Nestico, again with the decision to make. Still at a pretty good advantage right now.
Yeah,
he's a Pack Rat.
Yeah, he's aware that, Tom has nothing of note in hand, nor is he drawing anything of note this turn. So Mark can be pretty confident that he can just lean on Pack Rat at this stage.
Overgrown Tomb going to play tapped. Ross going to move up a little bit here. Desecration Demon trigger going to be put on the stack. Nestico says, feel free. I'm more than happy to take 6 given this situation. Ross obliges. He says you will take 6. Nestico's going to go down to 10 end step. Time to make a rat. And as you did mention, Patrick, Nestico knows everything that Ross has, both coming as far as the draw step with the Abrupt Decay and what's in his hand.
Yeah, and this is an disregarded drawback of Courser. It gives your opponent a lot of information to work with, and Mark's really able to capitalize here. There's theoretically cards that could be in Tom's deck that, Mark has to play around that he doesn't have to anymore.
You'll see your hero's downfall take down that courser so it can't block,
I guess.
or at least attempt to.
Tom is mulling over using that charm here.
Yeah, that'll work. I like that play. That's actually a really good play by Tom. He activates the Mutavault first, then puts a regeneration shield on so the Mutavault can actually block and not die. So I like that play a lot there by Ross. Pretty smart one. As now Mutavault will actually block. It will not die from damage. We're going to see 6 points of damage come across from those rats, and actually Mutavault's going to make it so that it's 8. And Nestico needs to make sure that he doesn't die on the counter attack.
Yeah, and if, we know that Tom is drawing a removal spell next turn. If Mark has to sacrifice one of his rats to protect himself here from that Desecration Demon, he loses a lot of his clock.
Messes up the clock big time. So there are your attacks, and is he just going to die in the counter? Now he's picking up his card, so is he going to die in the counter attack here? I'm not quite sure exactly what's happening here. This might be a concession here from Mark Nestico. We'll get clarification on exactly what did happen there.
I mean, Mark's in a ton of trouble there.
Yes.
But he's certainly not dead.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's definitely not dead, but we'll get exact clarification on who did win that game from our table spotter in a moment. But it looks like, yeah, Tom Ross did win as Nestico realized his mistake and does concede the game. So Tom Ross does win game number 1 as Nestico got a little bit hasty there, as I don't think he saw that play with the Golgari Charm, activate Mutavault, regenerate, and then be able to crack back and then get you for a lot of damage.
Yeah. No, when I spoke too soon when I said Tom had no way to get out from under Pack Rat.
Yeah.
Just very skillfully navigated the damage race.
Let's take a look at the sideboards here, my friends. We are going to begin with Mark Nestico, which I have in front of me. You're going to find 3 copies of Obsidian Ghost Council and Underworld Connections, 2 copies of Sin Collector, Glare of Heresy, 2 Duress, 3 Doomblade, 2 Renounce the Guilds, and a Revoke Existence. Of these cards, I gotta say I love Obsidian here. Really, really powerful card. Sin Collector also quite good as well, as you gotta believe Ross has a lot of spells in his deck, which we know he does.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, Mark has no reason to not believe that Tom is just some sort of Golgari control deck.
Yeah.
But no matter what the circumstances are, it's safe to assume Tom has a lot of removal spells.
On your side?
We got a Golgari Charm, a Mutavault, 2 Mizium Mortars, 2 Doomblades, a Thoughtseize, a Rakdos Return, 2 Lifebane Zombies, 2 Underworld Connections, and 3 Dark Betrayals. I like bringing in the 3 Dark Betrayals naturally. I like bringing in the additional copy of Underworld Connections because Mark showed up Plains and discarded Blood Baron. I also expect Mizium Mortars to come in here as well, and I like Thoughtseize and Rakdos Return. So Tom with a lot of tools to work with here. He can cut a lot of the creatures that just sort of die to all the removal that Mark has access to. We're looking at things potentially like Courser, like Scavenging Ooze, things that just aren't really well equipped to fight against Mark's overload of removal. And Tom can go into a much more card advantage focused game with his own removal spells, Underworld Connections, and Rakdos Return.
Yeah, I mean, as we mentioned last time we saw Tom on camera, one of the things that his deck is able to do, just like the Jund of old, is that it's able to sideboard out those mediocre and fringe cards that allow you to hedge game 1 and really side into just a really tight package of cards that are all towards one greater plan to get the job done.
If you look at Tom's sideboard here, if you look at it on first blush, you just say, okay, there's 3 Dark Betrayals. Those are for mono black or for black-white mid-range or whatever. But there's also just a lot of 1 and 2 ofs that he can bring in to have a total package of a really efficient removal and card advantage oriented deck. And like you just mentioned, Jund, and we see this with blue-white and Esper a lot in standard as well, sideboard in this way where they have a lot of 1 and 2 ofs that are pretty versatile and they get to cut inefficient stuff. So even though the sideboard looks like kind of random 1 ofs, and a lot of the times it's 1 ofs that are also cards that are in the main deck, it's kind of hard to make sense of exactly what's going on. It's all about trying to get your deck to be as streamlined as possible in the post-board games. And Tom has, looking at this, upwards of 10 cards I feel he could reasonably bring in this matchup, even though only the Dark Betrayals on first blush are cards you would look at and say, well, this is for mono black.
Yeah. Definitely agree with you there. As we do see both players finishing up sideboarding, I do want to thank you guys at home for watching Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Star City Games Open Series here in Atlanta. At SCG Live, hashtag SCGATL for your tweets all weekend long as we make it through our standard open here. We're almost halfway done.
We're really humming along so far. It's been a really crisp pace. Star City is really good at running events, and this is, as funny as it sounds, 580 is on the small side for standard open. So the turnover's been really fast so far.
Yeah, given what we saw last week in our 3rd largest standard open ever in St. Louis, definitely got to give a shout out to all those players yet again for showing up last week and making the tournament an absolute blast. But we are here in Atlanta watching Mark Nestico and Tom Ross battle here. Going to be really interesting to see what the results look like in the top 8 and top 16 decks of the standard portion of this tournament, given what we saw last weekend, which was complete and utter dominance by Green Red Monsters.
Yeah. Mark, always the company man with the new Panda sleeves. Are those actually just available for sale on the website, or are those an OP?
Available for sale on the website. You can get the bundles, just the sleeves itself, dice bag, deck box, playmat, all of that stuff. You can also get them in any of the open series that we come to as well. They are very popular, unsurprisingly. Everyone loves pandas.
I think if you had the Venn diagram of people who like to play Magic and people who like animatronic looking cute animals, there would be a lot of overlap between those two.
You can put me right in
There's
there.
a lot of cross section between those two demographics. So
simple and easy.
Just more brilliant marketing by Star City Games.
And to be fair, I love pandas. I love turtles.
Yeah.
I love penguins. I'm just a child at heart. I just want to play my video games and be left alone. That's all. Maybe even a little Pokemon. I never really was in that scene, though.
Yeah, that was a little after my time. At the time that Pokemon was big, I was in high school working at a game store, so
Nerd.
I actually resented Pokemon rather than actually played it myself.
Well, if you really want to resent Pokemon, you should watch Twitch Plays Pokemon. You should check that out. I watched that for an hour or two yesterday. My goodness. They didn't move. They didn't go anywhere.
Twitch Plays Pokemon is a really strong argument for dictatorships. You just can't allow the average person to participate in the decision-making process.
Did they beat it? Okay, apparently they beat. I don't know. I watched it for a while. I think they were spending an hour trying to get over a ledge to get to a gym. And I found it entertaining for like the first 30 minutes, but then they broke me.
Yeah.
Temple of Silence here for Nestico. Ross is going to start with the Temple of Bandits, so both players scrying to begin. There are a lot of people watching and playing it, though. I got to give them that.
Yeah, it is popular.
Yes. Nestico going to untap here. Let's see what he has on his second turn. Godless Shrine comes rolling off the top. Probably a discard spell, and it is Thoughtseize. So, Ross, show me your secrets. Rakdos' Return, a Hero's Downfall, and Underworld Connections, and a whole bunch of lands, it looks like. There's also a Scavenging Ooze in there.
And this is a great example of the type of deck that I was describing Tom could be able to sideboard into in the post-board games. Rakdos Returns and Underworld Connections both are horrible for Mark, assuming that he just has a lot of removal spells in his deck.
Yeah.
It's very hard for him to beat both of those cards. So Tom really able to shift the way his deck plays after sideboarding.
All right, Connections. Looks like that's going to go bye-bye.
And I like taking the Connections here. Of course, we don't know Mark's hand exactly, but Underworld Connections is the more short-term threat. He can find another discard spell in some turns to handle the Rakdos Return. But the Underworld Connections requires a response right now.
Yeah, that looks like what he wants to take. You know, he's obviously set it aside. I've been in this position before with a discard spell. It's like, I'm pretty sure I'm taking that, but give me just a second. All right, good to go. Good to go. Just want to make sure I take that and sculpt out my next few turns, given what I know you have and I have. Play my Godless Shrine tapped, and pass it back to you. Ross draws a Desecration Demon. Not a card you oftentimes see left in. It's just Scavenging Ooze against, you know, black decks.
I think that if I was in Tom's seat, I would be trying to cut creatures like Courser and Ooze first because of the threat of Lifebane Zombie, and you see Mark actually has one here. All the creatures are pretty fungible. They're likely to just kind of die when they show up.
Sure.
It's about attritioning out the removal spells. So I would just err on the side of trying to make his Lifebane Zombies less efficient.
So there is the 3-1, the hoser, as it were. Sees that Ross picked up a Desecration Demon, picked up a Swamp this turn. That's what Ross wants to do on this turn. He could very easily just kill the Lifebane Zombie with the Hero's Downfall in his hand. He's going to attack here, offering up the trade. Nestico says decline, respectively.
I think that if Tom's going to do that, he's certainly not going to do it right now. He might as well wait one more turn to get a little more information.
That's fair.
He
doesn't want to
afford-
overvalue the Ooze, I guess. Do you block there for Nestico? You're just okay taking the 2?
I think you're happy to trade 3 for 2. And again, Tom's probably sideboarded into a very removal-heavy deck based on what that Thoughtseize shows. You actually might be the beatdown in the post-board games. You may have to be the more aggressive party.
Nestico plays 4th land after attacking for 3. Ross is at 17. You see Mark at 16. And now Nestico is going to, of course, play Desecration Demon that he knows is going to die. Now Tom is going to play Desecration Demon of his own very quickly here. Attack with Scavenging Ooze, get in for 2. So you see our updated life totals here. Ross at 15, Nestico going to go down to 14. Take a draw. So Nestico has an answer. It looks like he has at least one.
And we know that, you know, Mark's deck has a lot of 5-mana haymakers here between Obsidat and Bloodbearing. It doesn't appear that he has a 5th land.
Okay, that's like the flashpoint. You see Hero's Downfall going to take care of the demon. attack here, and now there's a Rakdos return. There goes the entire grip.
Hoodalally.
Yep, that's a good Magic card. So here we go. Now we're going to play a little bit of top decking. As you mentioned, 5 mana is the kind of the flashpoint here. You see Blood Baron got discarded, and now he has drawn the 5th land. Mutavault, going to fire you up, get in for 5. But this is part of the power of Scavenging Ooze and the fact that it can gain a little bit of life while still dealing a whole bunch of damage.
Yeah, and Tom, this is about as 101 as Tom's game plan can really go here. He's traded mana and turns, both players kind of bouncing off of each other a little bit, and then setting up that big Rakdos returns, which is just an enormous swing. You look at a Lifebane Zombie, a Devour Flesh, and a Blood Baron, just an incredible suite of cards that Tom was able to take care of.
Ross looking at Carrington in his hand right now, deciding if he wants to use that. Is he going to play Overgrown Tomb untapped? A little bit risky, but he is. So he's going to go down to 5 momentarily. I think that's going to be moving up, yeah, and he's going to make this ooze much larger. 4 activations going to go up to 9. This would be an attack here for 6 to put Nestico down to 3. That's what's going to happen. So you've got Nestico at 3. You've got Ross at 9. Pass the turn back. Obviously, this is a threat that needs to be dealt with. There's a Blood Baron of a Scopa. That's not so bad.
It is unfortunate. It is rare to say this about Blood Baron, but it is just outclassed on the ground right now.
It is, but it's going to be on chump blocking duty, and that's actually pretty important. You see Ross kind of bang his hand on the table because 1, that's a blocker right now, but 2, that's a blocker that's protection from black, which means that Ross probably can't kill it, okay? And then 3, it's going to move Nestico up to 7 as opposed to 6. That's pretty important as well. So he's going to go up to 7. Now, of course, the Ooze can remove the Blood Baron. It would be an attack for 7 here, as there is Sylvan Caryatid. And I think Ross is going to pass the turn back. Now, I don't know if you saw the card that Ross drew for the turn. It was a copy of Golgari Charm, which is super important here, as that's going to take care of Lifebane Zombie. Really, really big draw there from Tom.
Dark Betrayal also hanging out in Tom's hand as well.
Oh, yeah, so he's got that Lifebane Zombie covered. Nestico looking at Mutavault, drew an Underworld Connections for the turn, trying to figure out exactly what he's supposed to do.
I really like the way that Tom's deck is set up here after sideboarding.
As do I.
It's just, it feels very surgical.
So Nestico realizing that he's in a tough situation right now. He says, all right, let me start by attacking with this for 3. There's Dark Betrayal. Get that thing out of here. Follow-up play. There's Underworld Connections. He says, all right, let me remove that really quick. Remove that as well with Scavenging. So Ross is going to go up to 8, and that Ooze is going to become an 8/8. Nestico, of course, sitting at 7. So we're looking at a lethal attack here. Here's an attack, there's an activate, and a block, and a tap to draw a card. Nestico's going to go down to 6. So we'll see if he can find some sort of answer to the Scavenging Ooze. And the wow, I'm with you. He's going to show 2 lands. Ross has Golgari Charm to be able to regenerate.
Yeah.
Whatever removal spell Nestico would peel off of the top, and that's going to do it. So, Tom Ross, you are 4-0, giving Mark Nestico his first defeat in a battle between Star City Games columnist. But I am with you, my friend. I do like the configuration of Ross's deck after sideboard, and I'll tell you what, Golgari Charm has looked very good for him so far.
Yeah, it's been really flexible in these games, you know, and the once he has an opening, then he can hold up regeneration as a regeneration trick.
Yes.
It's very rare that you see Scavenging Ooze run away with a game against Mono Black or against Orzhov or what have you, because there's a ton of removal spells. Usually Scavenging Ooze just shows up and kind of dies. But since Tom is able to sort of play this game of, you know, I can Thoughtseize